Hi everybody, how's it going? It's been quite a while since I made a video. I guess it's been over 5 months looking at my YouTube webpage. It's been a long summer with my daughter out of school and at work. I picked up an extra day working each week. I normally have 3 days off a week, but over the summer I was picking up an extra day because we had a lot of people either quit or get moved around and needed some extra help. So that was kind of a drag. I did try to make a few videos over the summer, but just didn't like the way they turned out at all and just scrapped them. So I'm going to try to get back into it now. And it's a good time because the Friends of the Library sale, which happens twice a year here, a really good place to pick up a lot of records and CDs and books if you're into books. Just wrapped up last week and I bought a fair amount of vinyl, not as much as I have in sales past. I missed the first 2 days. I work weekends now, and it starts on a Saturday and then Sunday and then runs through Wednesday. So I missed the first 2 days. Figured there wouldn't be a whole lot of great stuff left by the time I got there on Monday, the third day of the sale, but did pretty well, especially with jazz. So this video I'm going to show vinyl records exclusively. I got some CDs, but I'll save them for another video. And it's mostly jazz, I'll warn you right now. Almost 90% or more jazz. So if you're not into jazz, you might want to skip this video. But if you like jazz, you might appreciate it. There's some pretty cool stuff. So hopping right into it, at the they have a bunch of vinyl bins set up, and there's one little bin that's got like room for books and stuff. They put some books and pamphlets and stuff in there, so I always kind of check that out. And found a neat little pamphlet. It's titled Professional Methods for Record Care and Use. This looks like something from maybe the 60s, 70s. I'm not sure, I need to do some research. Put out, it says edited and printed by Elpa Marketing Industries. And I think what it actually is, it's kind of a marketing thing, selling, you know, it's got your basic information about how records work. You know, some pictures of grooves, dirt in the groove, and dirt on the needle. It's kind of a marketing piece for the makers of a piece of equipment called the Peristat. Some of you might be familiar with the Peristat, little device for cleaning records. There's a couple of versions of it there. And then they show some of their other products, like the preener and the dust bug. So I thought that was kind of cool. I always like to pick up old stuff like this, you know, about record care and how records are made and things like that. 78, these are really the last things I look at, 78 RPM records, the old shellac records. I'm not really into collecting 78s, but I'll pick some up if they look like interesting jazz titles. And this one kind of caught my eye because of some of the musicians credited on the label. The label, I haven't cleaned this up, it's pretty nasty, but it's a label called Black and White, which I'd never heard of. And the musicians that caught my eye in here are W. Collette baritone sax, and C. Menges bass. Of course, that's Charles Menges, and the W. Collette is Buddy Collette, sax and flute player, played a lot on the Hollywood scene, West Coast jazz scene. And this is Ivy Anderson and her All-Stars is the official band credited on here. She was a singer with Duke Ellington, sang on some of his big hits like Stormy Weather and It Don't Mean a Thing If You Ain't Got That Swing. And she left the band. She had some health problems, I think asthma or something like that, and kind of semi-retired, then came back and recorded like 6 sides for the Black and White label here. So yeah, it's kind of cool. And in this one I picked up almost as much for the cover art as just to actually hear the music. This is from Jimmy Lunsford and his orchestra, the Lunsford Special. Cool artwork. Columbia Records had some really cool artwork on their 1950s era albums. Cool modern style artwork. And carrying on with kind of the big band thing, this is more modernish big band, I guess, from probably the early 60s. A guy named Bobby Scott. Got another one of his records, which I kind of enjoyed. Young guy. I think he wrote all the tunes on this one. There's a photo of him. So I'm looking forward to checking that out. And nice Mercury stereo pressing here in nice shape, so we're going to give it a shot. Most of these records, pretty much everything I picked up was, I think the most expensive was $5. And a lot of stuff I picked up the final day of the sale when things were 10 cents, or the next to last day when things were half price. So didn't really pay anything more than $5 per record here. Another big band kind of guy, more modernish big band. Gerald Wilson, the Gerald Wilson Orchestra on Pacific Jazz. Feeling kind of blues, and I didn't realize, but I actually picked up 2 copies of this album. This one more of a, this may have been the original pressing here. Pacific Jazz, after Liberty had bought them out. About the same time Liberty bought out Blue Note, I guess. And then this one, this is you know, I think like a 1980s reissue there. And another one by Gerald Wilson on Stage. This one definitely a 1980s Pacific Jazz reissue. A lot of them had that generic cover there with kind of woodblock Japanese style artwork. Some vocal jazz here. Joe Stafford, Joe plus Jazz on Columbia. Got some good players on here. Ben Webster, Johnny Hodges, Ray Nance, Jimmy Rowells, Don Fagerquist. Kind of cool. I'm starting to get into vocal jazz more. Some twofers here. 2 LP sets on Verve. Bird and Prez, the 46 concerts on Verve. And these recordings from, I believe, yeah, Jazz at the Philharmonic, the series that Norman Granz put on. The Greatest Jazz Concert Ever, featuring Charlie Parker, Dizzy Gillespie, Bud Powell, Charles Mingus, and Max Roach. Prestige Records twofer. And I don't know what was wrong with the guy who owned this record, but he had to write on here several times. 1953, and then lovely all over the inside of the jacket here too. And underlined stuff in blue marker like a dummy. I guess he had a hard time remembering what year it was recorded. Really strange. Okay. Another Verve twofer. Tenor Giants, Ben Webster and Coleman Hawkins. 1950s recordings here. And this one kind of cool on the G. Norman Presents label. Charlie Ventura in concert. I like that cover artwork by a guy named John Brandt. Pretty cool stuff. Kind of gives a sense of the stage fright a musician might feel with a zillion faces peering down on him. But yes, it's pretty cool stuff. I think this is actually the first release from the G. Norman Presents label. Very first LP. Stan Getz, Cool Velvet, Stan Getz and Strings on Verve. This one's a little bit knackered, a little bit beat up, but I'll pick up any Stan Getz pretty much I see. Jerry Mulligan Quartet, What Is There to Say on Columbia. I think I've got a copy of this, but I'm not sure what condition it's in. This one might be a little bit better. Nice quartet here with Art Farmer on trumpet, Dave Bailey on drums, Bill Crow on bass. The Magic Flute of Herbie Mann, also on Verve. This looks almost like it might be a compilation. There's not a whole lot of info, but I don't think he recorded much for Verve, so I'm guessing it's original material. But I like picking up the older Herbie Mann records. Don't really pick up a lot of his stuff beyond, I don't know, beyond the 60s. He's put out so much stuff. I mean, it's good stuff, but there's just so much. Oscar Peterson Trio and Orchestra, With Respect to Nat. Again, I've got another copy of this one, but this one I'm guessing is going to be an upgrade. It's in really nice shape. So it's the Oscar Peterson Trio playing the music of Nat King Cole on Limelight. A label I don't see too often. Here's another one on Limelight. Another pianist, Les McCann, plays the hits. Not a huge fan of Les McCann's later period where he played a lot of the kind of hip-hop songs of the era, things like that, but it was, picked this up on the last day of the sale for 10 cents. Terry Gibbs and Buddy DeFranco, Chicago Fire. This is a Contemporary Records release from the 80s. Great West Coast label. Terry Gibbs on bobs, Buddy DeFranco, clarinet player. And it looks like it's signed on the back by somebody. I don't know who. Das is Jazz on Decca. This looks pretty interesting. It's a collection of German jazz musicians, and the name that caught my eye, Jutta Hipp, I think it's how it's pronounced. She was a pianist in Germany who came over to the US. Leonard Feather had brought her over, and she recorded, I think, like a 10-inch for Blue Note, and did a few more recordings, I think, and then kind of suffered from stage fright and dropped out of the music career, so didn't make a whole lot of recordings, but a very talented jazz pianist. RCA Victor, they did a lot of really interesting stuff in the 50s. This one called The Drum Suite. Not stereo, not one of their, I don't know if this came out in stereo, if there was a stereo version of this, but it looked interesting. It says a musical portrait of 8 arms from 6 angles. And it's, I guess, put together by Manny Album and Ernie Wilkins and their orchestra. So it's got 4 drummers, including O.C. Johnson and Don Lamond, 2 of the names I recognize. And then a nice backing band. I'm not going to read all the band names, members' names. Henry Mancini. I like to pick up Henry Mancini. His jazzy stuff, not his later stuff, it got a little sappy, but this one called Combo, and he's kind of focused here on small jazz combo music. So I've got some really good players here. Pete Candoli on trumpet, Dick Nash on trombone, Ted Nash on sax, Johnny Williams on keyboards, and this came from the collection of Thomas Olmsted. I picked up quite a few records this sale from a gentleman. They all have his name on it, Thomas Olmsted, so pretty cool. Nice to sort of inherit his collection. I've already got a copy of this, but this one is kind of an OG pressing. The other one's like a 70s reissue. Johnny Mandel's great jazz score for I Want to Live, featuring Shelly Manne, Jack Sheldon, Bill Holman, Frank Rossellino, a lot of good jazz, West Coast jazz players. And again, from the collection of Thomas Olmsted. Another film-related one, this one, the music by Elmer Bernstein from The Man with the Golden Arm on Decca. And again, it's got some of the West Coast jazz players, Shelly Manne on drums. Jazz arrangements by Shorty Rogers. Another name that popping up again, Manny Album and the Jazz Greats of Our Time, Volume 1 on Coral Records. And I've actually already got a copy of this one. I thought maybe I had Volume 2 and I was picking up Volume 1. I have 2 Volume 1s here. Again, a lot of the good, I think, not so much West Coast. We got, yeah, perhaps, Jerry Mulligan, Al Cohn, Zoot Sims, Phil Woods, Bob Brookmeyer, Art Farmer, O.C. Johnson, Milt Hinton, Hank Jones. So definitely, yeah, the jazz greats. A lot of talented jazz players there. A label I always like to pick up, kind of an oddity, Jazz Tone. It was a mail order jazz records deal, and I think they originally started putting out, they'd mail out 10-inch records, and then it became 12-inch records, or maybe they did both at the same time, I'm not quite sure. But they would take music from different labels, and sometimes they just kind of reissue a whole record, or they'd reissue a record with one artist on one side, different artist on the other side. So this one is called Today's Jazz, the Bob Brookmeyer and Zoot Sims Quartet. And they all, not all, but a lot of them in the early period had this same kind of background art. Sometimes in green, sometimes in blue, maybe in different colors, but I always thought these are pretty cool. I used to see them around a lot more in like thrift stores and antique shops, but not so much lately. This one with a different cover, another jazz tone, Delightfully Light, Cal Jader Quartets and Red Norvo Trios. A couple of vibe players there. And I picked these up the last day of the sale for 10 cents a piece. Kind of late stuff from the 80s, but looked interesting. The Great Fontana, Carl Fontana. I don't recognize his name, but some of the other players, Al Cohn on tenor sax, Ray Drummond on bass. And this is on the Uptown label. You can see Uptown logo, kind of an audiophile label. It was engineered by Rudy Van Gelder, recording engineer Rudy Van Gelder, recorded at his studio in Englewood Cliffs, New Jersey. And you can't really see it, but this is sort of the, hold it up to the light, it's that kind of smoky brown colored translucent vinyl. Kind of another oddball label, Famous Door. This one called John's Bunch, the John Bunch Quintet, with Al Cohn and Irby Green. Al Cohn on sax, Irby Green trombone. And it's actually signed on the back to Clyde from Irby Green. Kind of neat. A guy I don't normally get into that much, Maynard Ferguson, trumpet player, but this one was on the MPS BASF label. Looked interesting, paid 10 cents for it. Trumpet Rhapsody. So Maynard Ferguson with orchestra, I guess conducted by Rolf Hans Mueller. Kind of cool. An older Maynard Ferguson on the Roulette label, A Message from Birdland. Alright, and then a lot of times, it seems like what I tend to end up picking up at these sales, a lot of West Coast jazz. I showed a lot of these things already have the big West Coast players, but this is like, a lot of these things are really focused on the West Coast scene, and kind of some of the more obscure stuff, things that, you know, most people wouldn't even recognize, like what it is or if it's worth owning, whether it's jazz or just smooth, easy listening. So here's an interesting one, Dick Marks and Dick Marks on piano, Buddy Collette on flute. Marks Makes Broadway with Flute and Friends on the Omega Disc label. I've never heard of that label before. Look kind of cool. This guy looks kind of menacing in that photo. But yeah, Buddy Collette on flute, Howard Roberts on guitar, Carson Smith bass, Red Mitchell bass, Frank Kapp drums. Really good players. A couple here on the Crown label. Crown put out some really kind of subpar pressings and used some really cheap sleeves for the records. They probably fell apart the minute they left the factory, but these are a couple of pretty early looking ones. They've got a very early Crown Records logo on them. First up, one called Jazz Surprise. I'll show you the there's kind of the early Crown Records logo. And these are interesting because on the back, a lot of the Crown Records you see, they just have a list of the different catalog releases on the back, but these actually have a little info about the record, which is nice. But it says, are you wondering who these people are? They're referring to the musicians they hint at. Oh well, perhaps it's only fair to give you a little hint. Do these artists include Wardell Gray, Ben Webster, Stan Getz, Vito Musso, Charlie Barnett, Sonny Criss, Oscar Moore, Teddy Edwards, Buddy Stewart? So this is kind of a mishmash of different live recordings. There's a website online called like West Coast Jazz Research, where the guy actually kind of figured out where some of these recordings came from and who the actual musicians were. But it's pretty interesting stuff. Vito Musso, another sax player, the Swinginist. Another early Crown Records, and again, kind of unusual for Crown. They actually have info about the album on the back. And then a label I like to collect. This is Pacific Jazz, Jerry Mulligan Quartet, Paris Concert. This one's fairly rough, but I actually paid $3 for this one. Grabbed it in the first day of the sale. Jerry Mulligan, Bob Brookmeyer on trombone, Red Mitchell bass, Frank Isola on drums. And a couple of Pacific Jazz records here, missing the jackets here. Zoot Sims Choice. This is Pacific Jazz LP. I can't see it. So you got Zoot Sims, Russ Freeman piano, Billy Bean guitar, or Jim Hall on guitar, Monty Budwig or Mel Lewis on drums. Sounds like a good lineup. This one I bought the last day of the sale because it doesn't have, it's a 10-inch, didn't have the original jacket, and it's just scuffed and beat up to hell, but you know, for 10 cents it's kind of neat to look at. Pacific Jazz LP2, so their second LP from the label. This is the Jerry Mulligan Quartet featuring Chet Baker on one side, and Lee Konitz plays with the Jerry Mulligan Quartet on the other side. But yeah, really beat up, scuffed up. Cleaned it up yesterday, but it's still it's Rice Krispies listening to. On the Jazz West Coast label, which is a division of Pacific Jazz Records, a compilation here, Jazz West Coast Volume 3, an anthology of California music. So a lot of great players on here: Bud Shank Quartet, Chico Hamilton Quintet, Jerry Mulligan Sextet, Art Pepper Quartet, Chet Baker Sextet, and on, Bud Shank. All those great West Coast jazz players. Another one from the Jazz West Coast label, Jazz Pianists Galore, featuring John Lewis, Russ Freeman, Hampton Hawes, Pete Jolly, Jimmy Rouse, Al Haig, Carl Perkins, Bobby Timmons, Richard Twardzik. Pretty interesting. I'll show you the label here. The Jazz West Coast label, it's kind of cool. Yes, this is a sub-label of Pacific Jazz Records out of Hollywood, California. And another label, West Coast Jazz label, Bethlehem, I like to collect. That's where I believe Creed Taylor got his start, later Verve Records, and then Impulse, and then CTI Records. This is a 3 LP set, Bethlehem's Best. So it's got a lot of the, another one from the collection of Thomas Olmsted. Nice compilation of stuff from Bethlehem Records. And then this one, a real oddity here, a 10-inch LP, excerpts from Bethlehem's new production of Gershwin's Porgy and Bess. I've actually got the complete, it's like a 2 or 3 CD set of Porgy and Bess, Bethlehem Records version of Porgy and Bess. Definitely not the definitive version of Porgy and Bess, but still cool. This one missing its jacket here, just in a generic jacket. But this is East Coast Jazz Series number 7, K and JJ. So it's Kai Wending and JJ Johnson on trombones, with Dick Katz on piano, Milt Hinton bass, Al Harewood drums, Wendell Marshall on bass as well. Interesting stuff. Bill Holman, I believe he played with Stanton Ken's orchestra, like a lot of these West Coast guys, before he went off on his own. Here's his attempt at big band arrangements. Bill Holman's Great Big Band on Capitol, another one from the collection of Thomas Olmsted. Thank you, Thomas. Kind of an odd label. I'm not familiar with this label, Carlton, but this is the greatest stereo vibraphone in recording history. Hear this new vibe sound in your home tonight. Gene Estes on vibraphone. And John Pisano on guitar. Don't really recognize any of the other names, but good stuff. Give it a listen. Nice, smooth, laid-back vibraphone jazz. And then getting into the really good stuff here. I always expect, if I miss the first couple days of the sale, there's going to be nothing really kind of mainstream left that people would recognize. Things like Blue Note or Prestige or whatever. Definitely the rock and roll, rock stuff, 60s, 70s rock stuff is pretty wiped out by the third day. I think that's what most people look for: Fleetwood Mac, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, The Doors, whatever. But there's not a whole lot of jazz guys in town, so a lot of the stuff gets left behind, and the other jazz guys probably must be picky about condition. And a lot of the stuff's kind of beat up, hand-me-down type stuff. But you know, for a couple bucks or 10 cents or whatever, I'll pick them up. A couple here on the Roost label, Royal Roost. First up, the saxophones of Sonny Stitt. And this one's definitely got some condition problems here. But should play okay. These older 60s, you know, late 50s, early 60s recordings, yeah, they take a look in, but keep on ticking. You know, might get a little bit of the old Rice Krispie sound, but these aren't too terribly beat up. And then the other one, a little bit of Stitt. Another one by Sonny Stitt on saxophones here. So those are cool. I paid half price for these. One was originally $5, one originally $4, so you know, $2.50, $2, not bad. A couple records here. I actually own this already on vinyl. I couldn't remember if I had a stereo pressing, so I bought another copy for. Got this one for half price, half $3, so $1.50. George Shearing and the Montgomery Brothers. So that's Wes Montgomery on guitar and his brothers on bass and vibes. And then this one I saw and I thought, oh, there's another one, a different album by George Shearing and the Montgomery Brothers. I didn't realize he did another one. This one called Love Walked In. Well, it turns out when I get home, they're the same record. And one's just got a different cover. You know, one's got, you know, the band, and then one's got a picture of a pretty girl. I don't know if that was a marketing decision, if they didn't like the idea of a white guy playing with black guys, or they thought a, you know, pretty girl would sell records better. I don't know. Kind of odd though, but now I've got 3 different versions of the record, and they're all in pretty nice shape. And then finally, some Blue Notes. Didn't expect to really see any Blue Notes left over. This one, a 2 LP set from the Blue Note Jazz Classic Series. Originally $7, I paid $3.50 on the half price day. 2 recording sessions by Stanley Turrentine. This one called Jubilee Shouts. And recording sessions from 1961 and 1962 that were kind of left in the vaults and then reissued here, I think in the late 70s. Some good players on one session. He's got his brother Tommy Turrentine on trumpet, Horace Parlin piano, George Tucker bass, Al Harewood drums. And in the other session, his brother Tommy on trumpet, Kenny Burrell on guitar, Sonny Clark piano, Butch Warren bass, and then again Al Harewood on drums. So looking forward to checking those out. I think I've actually already got this on vinyl, but this one was in nice shape, and it was only $1.50 for some reason. Jimmy Smith Bucket, the incredible Jimmy Smith, with Quentin Warren on guitar, Donald Bailey on drums. So definitely not going to pass down a Jimmy Smith on Blue Note for $1.50. And in this one, I saw this the first day of the sale. It was $7, and when I pulled out the record was pretty scuffed up. The cover looked pretty nasty. It definitely had some condition problems. So I didn't want to pay $7 for it right away. The half price day came and I was looking for it to buy it. And I didn't see it. I figured someone else had bought it, and it popped up the last day, the 10-cent day, and I snatched it up for 10 cents. This is the Horace Silver Quintet doing the thing at the Village Gate. So a live recording here. Horace Silver on piano, Blue Mitchell on trumpet, Junior Cook on tenor sax, Gene Taylor bass, Roy Brooks on drums. The cover had a lot of shelfware, kind of, you know, grayish, blackish shelfware, and I took some glass stovetop cleaner and I used that to sort of buff the shelfware off real lightly, and then just wipe it off with a terry cloth towel, and it doesn't really scuff up the shiny surface. You wouldn't want to use it on any record that doesn't have a shiny surface. I don't use it on the backs. They're kind of shiny, but It works really well on the front of most records, especially white records, and really takes off that shelf wear and cleans them up nice. The record itself, yeah, it's got a lot of scuffs. It's really scuffed up. It looks like an original pressing. It's got RVG in the dead wax. Got the Plastilite ear, the little P looking thing. Yeah, as you can see, a lot of scuffs, but they're pretty superficial. Cleaned it up yesterday, and it plays pretty good. Once the music kicks in, the scuffs aren't real bad noticeably. And probably if I had like a conical stylus, it wouldn't be quite so noticeable. You can see there it's got the deep groove on the label on that side. On this side, not so much. Kind of weird. It's like plates from two different eras used to press it. And then finally, try to go through these really quick. Some classical records and some Disney records here. And I know I'm going over the 30-minute mark probably at this point. I like to pick these up. Golden Imports series from Mercury, imported from Europe. I think these are Dutch pressings done by Philips. So, yeah. A couple Living Stereo Shaded Dog RCA records. This one, Morton Gould and his orchestra doing Grand Canyon Suite and Wellington's Victory. And Virgil Fox Encores. Virgil Fox playing the pipe organ at Riverside Church, I believe in New York City. Really nice, super clean, shaded dogs. These ones, some of them are worth a lot of money, these two aren't really. And then a, looks like a record, but it's not. It's actually a rubber platter mat. Replacement platter mat, I guess. Picked that up for 10 cents. And some Disney records that are in really nice shape. I always pick these up for my wife. We've got a pretty big Disney collection, probably easily over 1,000 records, and these are probably going to be upgrades. So I paid like $1 or less for these. I'm not going to read out the titles of all these, you can kind of see. Most of these are sort of kiddie records. This one may be a little more adult oriented here. Treasure Island music. But yeah, these are all nice and clean. Someone took good care of these. One of these days I'll go through the collection, the Disney collection, and get it better organized and shoot some videos of all the Disney records. This one's kind of interesting. I don't think we had this one in the collection. We probably have about 80% of the Disneyland record series here, but this is The Adventures of Bullwhip Griffin. And I don't believe we had this one already. I think that's something you see in the thrift stores all the time. Happiest Millionaire. Prince and the Pauper. Dr. Dolittle. This one you see all the time, Heidi. These came out, I believe, in the late 70s. Compilation, The Best of Disney. And then this was kind of cool, a little EP set, The Little Lame Lamb, told by Mary Martin. And it's kind of like a gatefold here. It's paper, it's not cardboard, so it's pretty floppy. It's got a little booklet inside with artwork and the story. And then two 7-inch records on the inside. I'm not going to pull them out. And this one from the Mickey Mouse Club series. This is MM24. Songs from Annette and Other Walt Disney Serials. These Annette records, I used to see them at record shows, and they go for quite a bit of money. I think because of the older collectors who grew up watching the Mouseketeers and Annette Funicello and her beach movies and all that. Paid, this was originally $6. I bought it in half price day for $3. Pretty cool. And then this one's pretty neat. This is a British pressing here. Walt Disney Presents The Living Desert and the Vanishing Prairie. It's got a nice British, super shiny laminated front there. And then kind of more of a matte finish back. Pretty cool. Don't see too many British pressings of Disney records. We've got some like Mexican and maybe Spanish pressings. And then finally, kind of tangential here, but the Lawrence Welk and his Champagne Music play the music of Walt Disney on Coral Records. Kind of cheesy, but kind of cool. So that's it. That's all the vinyl from the Friends of the Library sale. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.